Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was already a failure in the development stage. Shocking, I know.
So I know I'm super late with this news, but this came right around the time that Summer Game Fest happened and Inside Out 2 stuff, and so I was really busy during that time. But I've covered Suicide Squad quite a bit on this channel, so I figured even if it's late, it's still worth discussing. We finally kind of know what happened behind the scenes with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League.
Well, hey, it's always interesting considering how much of a massive disappointment Suicide Squad was. I wouldn't be honestly surprised if they came out and say, oh yeah, the weapons and the mods and the things, that was created by AI. I honestly would not be surprised at this point.
The various management missteps that led to this game.
No, wait, no. Actually, I take it back. AI would have done a better job. It was done by people who literally could not care less, and probably people who did not even have an idea what's going to happen.
Fumbling and stumbling at launch, and that led to what I think will eventually be an inevitable death. Looking at Metacritic right now, you can see that across the board, the reception surrounding this game from critics and players alike is just not favorable. Beyond that, you've got the fact that on a corporate level for Warner Brothers, this was a huge L, with Suicide Squad having lost Warner Brothers over $200 million. That's just how poorly it did as a live service. It completely failed to recoup development costs. And then looking at what the player base looks like right now, not only did Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League launch to a tepid all-time peak number of just a little over 13,000.
106 players, 24-hour peak? That's better than I honestly expect. No, I'm serious. This is way better than I expected. I expected it to be like 50 peak, but do you think these are bots or something? There's no way they're humans, right?
1,000 players. But also right now, we're looking at 24-hour peaks that are in the low triple digits and currently just double digits.
106 is not the low triple digits, okay? That's barely a triple digit.
Worth of players checking this game out. That is simply not sustainable for such an expensive live service.
The 106 is the equivalent of Dr. Disrespect, and he didn't intend to do anything.
Not enough people are playing and engaging and spending money on the microtransactions, and not enough people will engage with future content. And so now we're in a situation where it's very likely that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League will suffer the same fate as the likes of Anthem, Marvel's Avengers, and Redfall, all developed by studios that traditionally make single-player experiences.
Good.
And were too ambitious with their live service endeavors and went for a route that was more about chasing a trend rather than making something that will truly take the genre to the next level. So what exactly?
The most fun part is I honestly don't even know what kind of trend they're chasing, because live action looter shooters, this is not Fortnite, right? This is no way equivalent to Fortnite or whatever. So I don't know what kind of magical trend they were even honestly chasing, except microtransactions.
Exactly happened? Well, here is an investigative report from Jason Schreier published back in June 6, 2024 via news outlet Bloomberg. If you want the nitty-gritty details, I'd recommend you check this article out. I've got for you guys a basic summary of everything that happened. And it all began back in 2015 when, after the launch of Batman Arkham Knight, co-founders of Rocksteady Studios, Jamie Walker and Sefton Hill, wanted to work on a new IP, more specifically on a multiplayer puzzle-solving game codenamed Stones. But then they got the license to Suicide Squad, and at the end of 2016, they decided to scrap Project Stones in favor of this Suicide Squad endeavor, which...
Smart.
I understand that compulsion. I mean, they already delved into the Batman verse with the Arkham series. So, you know, Suicide Squad, with Rocksteady's pedigree of experience as far as action games are concerned, that could have been a great combo if it hadn't been for Warner Brothers executives pitching making that game a live service, because, as you know, all game publishers like to say that live service is the future and that's where the focus should be. which is not a future that we want. We want variety of games. There is a place for live services, but if that's all we're chasing just for the sake of monetization and for the sake of corporate goals, then that loses the soul of creativity. But Rocksteady was convinced by Warner Brothers executives, and so Rocksteady leadership decided ultimately that Suicide Squad would be a live service, which already had staff concerned.
Wow, that is an unbelievable story. It's not like the Warner Brothers just tells them what to do. That's reality, okay? Rocksteady doesn't have a choice. But to be fair, Rocksteady, it's not the people who designed Batman, Arkham, whatever's. No, those people are long, long gone at this point. And, well, doesn't really matter. They couldn't probably pull off a new Batman game of the same caliber anyway.
And to make this endeavor work, they had to increase their workforce by quite a bit, from roughly 160 employees to more than 250. And that kind of increase was kind of too much for Rocksteady to handle. They were just not used to managing that many people. And at the same time, that's still a much smaller team compared to, say, Destiny's team, which is significantly larger, which emphasizes
Destiny's team is like 1K people or something like that in total.
just how unprepared Rocksteady was to tackle a live service of this scale and magnitude and ambition. Matters weren't helped by the fact that leadership just had no clear direction, which seems to be a common occurrence for these failing live services. Anthem, for example, a big part of why that failed was because of a failure to have a very clear idea of what this game was going to be. Ideas kept changing, stuff kept getting.
By the way, this is not even a fail of leadership in a normal sense. In Anthem's case, they had no real clue what the hell they were doing until like 2 months before release. There was no leadership, by the way. I think this is honestly more a point for leadership, because when stuff like this happens, that means that there's just no one at the lead. Because leadership is very simple. It's probably one guy deciding stuff and saying, yes, this goes at the end of the day and this doesn't. So this is not a problem of leadership being bad, honestly. This is a problem of leadership not even existing. Which is, honestly, I can't even imagine how a situation like that really happens.
Scrapped. The same thing happened with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and weird decisions were made, like shifting the focus away from melee combat and focusing more on guns, and that left the staff confused because characters like Captain Boomerang, you would think he would use his, boomerang as his primary offensive weapon.
No, why would you assume that Captain Boomerang is gonna use a boomerang? Killer Shark, who is a shark, doesn't hit. Well, he does hit people, but he doesn't even bite people. He uses a minigun. Why would you assume that Captain Boomerang uses a boomerang? That is just wild.
Weapon, so them suddenly shifting to everyone using guns, that homogenized all the characters and made them all feel kind of samey, save for a
No, I don't agree with this take. There are plenty of games that all characters use guns in, and surprise, surprise, each character feels different. There are plenty of games where characters only use melee, for example, but every character feels different. So it's not inherently a problem of, oh, everyone uses guns and that's why it's bad because it's homogenized. No. The reason why it was bad was because, have you seen the base gameplay of it? Jesus Christ, that looks boring. Have you ever seen King Shark, who is a shark, shoot that minigun? Oh, it's not a minigun. It's like a pellet shooter or something like that. It's worse than a goddamn Nerf gun. Honestly, it feels like no kick, no impact, no good sound, no absolutely nothing.
A few elements like the way they move and some ultimates, but overall, it's just you're shooting, and that's kind of the main form of combat, and it robbed the characters of their uniqueness, which shouldn't be the case for something like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which is comprised of a ragtag band and team of men.
I think the way that they tried to make this BS unique is the travel system, because you had Spider-Man, you had the Flash, you had King Shark, who is a shark, and you had a pretty bad jetpack.
members who are very unique from each other. And then there's the fact that compared to their previous games, compared to the Arkham games, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League's open world was just significantly larger, on top of the fact that they were going to have multiple playable heroes, and all of that apparently made programming for the game a nightmare for the engineers, just made things so much more complex.
Bro, I wonder if Mr. Freeze is coming. Or is it Mrs. Freeze? I have no idea, but it's literally a trans character. I have no idea which one is it supposed to be, but yeah. Whichever Freeze we get is an actual trans character, which is gonna be great.
Complex, and so engineers were forced to create short-term solutions and fixes that would screw them over in the long run, because they thought that there was just this set deadline and they had to take these shortcuts to meet those deadlines. And so eventually, once they realized there's no way we can ship this game in time, all those short-term solutions that would cause long-term problems were there. And so that led to delays that forced them to have to go back and kind of re-engineer and reprogram things. And they had to fix a lot of spaghetti code, if you will. Progress was further stalled by Sefton Hill, one of the co-founders of Rocksteady and director on Suicide Squad, because it would just simply take him too long to review developers' work and provide feedback. It would take anywhere from weeks to months. That's paired with the fact that he consistently struggled to maintain and relay a consistent vision, and the constant scrapping of things that developers would work months on didn't help matters. So, for example, apparently originally they were going to have this extensive vehicle system, but then the developers were like, well, all these characters can move pretty well in the open world, so why do we need a vehicle system at all? That vehicle system was worked on for months, and then, developers realized it was just kind of, it was very redundant, and so that whole system was eventually scrapped. And
how do you not come to this conclusion before anything, though, honestly? No, seriously, how do you not come to that exact conclusion the moment you actually even consider vehicles? Do they have absolutely no ability of just foresight? Okay. Listen, boys, listen. We have these unique heroes, and then they have these traveling modes. Spider-Man, and the map is really bad, but there's a lot of verticality in it. So, do we want to add vehicles? Dude, Timmy from Timmy's Emporium would literally say, "That seems stupid," and he would be right. How do you not come up with that solution on the spot? My question would be.
And so that vehicle system and the fact that developers had spent months on it only for it to not be used in the end ended up wasting months of development time. Sources also relate to Bloomberg and Jason Schreier that Sefton Hill wasn't playing the games that he was taking inspiration from, so he wasn't playing games like Destiny to learn why these kinds of more successful live services and looter shooters work. What about these games make them successful? So Sefton Hill was directing a looter shooter live service pretty much blindly, which certainly doesn't help when this whole studio, Rocksteady, has never made a live service game, and so they do need to take a look at the competition and take some inspiration, while of course adding their
The people at Rocksteady who were making this game, they weren't even the original Batman crew. It's not, it wasn't the situation of, we have never designed a live service game. It was, we haven't really ever designed probably a game ever to begin with type of situation also.
Their own spin to it, but to not try to learn from existing live services at all when there's a studio that is only experienced in making single player experiences. I mean, that only added to the development troubles and struggles behind the scenes. Apparently during development there was a constant
Well, to be fair, Diablo 4 failed when it launched, and then their solution to try and make the game better is copy everything from Diablo 3 into Diablo 4. Not a genius solution, arguably.
struggle to find ways to make the activities in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League feel both repeatable and fun rather than repetitive and tedious. And so a lot of employees had a lot of concerns surrounding the direction of the game or the lack thereof, the workflow and certain decisions behind it. But management and leadership wouldn't listen, and they promised that just things would work out because they were rock steady and that made games like Arkham that ended up working out in the end. This all reminds me a lot of the whole BioWare magic mentality that was reported on in regards to what happened to Anthem and Mass Effect Andromeda, where the development was a
Why does everyone call it magic? Blizzard also called it, oh, let's do some Blizzard magic, and it is calling your actions magic just some kind of inevitable gateway Nostradamus prediction that it's gonna end in tragedy?
mess, but there was this toxic positivity where leadership would go, don't worry about it, we are awesome, and we are the studio, we are the BioWare, or in this case, we are the Rocksteady. And so no matter what the criticisms may be surrounding how this game is being developed, things are going to work out in the end. So instead of trying to fix the issue, they just kind of decided.
Also, this doesn't sound like this doesn't sound like management fully failed, because this is a thing that can happen. You got your upper management, you got your middle management, and all these managements. I wonder if the guy who was supposed to review everything was just, maybe he was actually overswamped because people did like the most minorest thing and then he needed to review it, and then it piled on like this. Because there is a situation like that. Typically, bosses or anyone with any semblance of brains is not gonna review everything after the most minorest of changes, okay? You typically review something big, and then there's a lot of changes that need to be done. That's how you kind of do these things. And if he was completely overswamped, maybe there was a situation where everything minor just instantaneously got sent for reviews. And if you do things like that, you can lose track really fast, honestly, of what you're doing, which is wild.
To ignore the problems and engage in this culture where criticism and constructive feedback and fixing things based on that feedback was discouraged, and it was just more about pushing through this lackluster environment, just ignoring the problems for the sake of positivity and pretending like they're too good to fail.
Also, in a situation like this, usually it's down to a lower management to kind of just ignore what upper management is telling you, and just doing things slightly different. Because if the result is good, the upper management is not going to say, this is not what I wanted. Because the lower management should be capable and smart enough to say, yeah, we then work this in because it's awesome based on your idea, and you work around it like that.
Except the final results obviously highlight the fact that no studio is immune to failure. If a project is mismanaged enough, no amount of BioWare magic or toxic positivity or grandstanding because you are the studio that made prolific games such as this and that, no amount of that is going to help if the process is utterly fucked and if leadership is just not managing things well, doesn't offer proper direction, and is just completely butchering the pipeline of the development.
Yeah. Typically, I defend leadership a little bit because people don't understand, obviously, what the leadership actually has to do and how, honestly, bad the typical employee is. There's a lot of misunderstanding in it because, let's face it, most people are the average employee. You know how it works. There's 10 people and then there's one leader. That's how it works. So, statistically, most people don't really understand or know how actually leadership fully functions and whatnot. But yeah, this definitely seems like a failure of leadership, a failure of, honestly, everything. Completely everything.
Process. And then what further didn't help is the fact that when Warner Brothers executives would review progress reports and demos of the in-progress builds of the game, they would
probably demand changes.
Provide overwhelmingly positive feedback. And of course they would, because they weren't looking at the game from the perspective of a gamer. They were looking at it.
Okay, yeah. If all Warner Brother wants to check in is how the microtransaction shop looks, then I guess they get an A for passing.
From the perspective of businessmen, they were looking at it from the perspective of, oh my God, this could make us a lot of money because it's a live service and it looks pretty enough. but they didn't really understand the nitty-gritty nuances of what makes a good live service good. It was just this echo chamber of executives looking at the game that they wanted, the gold mine that they hoped this game would achieve, rather than looking at the game from an objective perspective and looking at it from the perspective of, is this actually fun to play? Would people jive with this? Would they stick with this for the long term? Warner Brothers executives were so confident in what they were seeing, in fact, that they apparently told Rocksteady that they believed very strongly that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League could become a billion-dollar franchise, that this game could take this franchise to
Well, money-wise, I mean, sure, I guess.
that level of financial success. Fast forward to present day.
Yeah, no, this is a failure on, well, on management for sure, but on every level of management.
And the game cost them $200 million as of their last financial meeting and investors call. Eventually, around fall of 2022, out of the blue, co-founders Jamie Walker and Sefton Hill would leave Rocksteady to start a new studio called 100 Star Games. They expressed the intent of having a development studio that is free from corporate mandates and pressures. So clearly, there was something about the way Warner Brothers was operating and the way they were handling their leadership of Rocksteady and Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League that the co-founders were not happy about. Though based on the reporting here, it does feel like Sefton Hill in particular did contribute to some of the woes surrounding Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League's development. But yeah, eventually the game would come out on February of 2024 after numerous delays and after a lot of skepticism from fans who saw the marketing material.
Well, the skepticism from fans didn't just come from marketing material, it came from literally everything that we saw, by the way. You only needed to take one look at their release trailer or the first 5 minutes of gameplay or whatever they had, and it was, dude, it was written in the stars. Everyone could see it bright as day, okay? It was a failure. Even the trailer had a moment where the camera just jinks like this. Holy.
And realize that this just looks like another generic, repetitive, insufferable, boring, substanceless live service looter shooter, and that's precisely what it all.
Well, actually, from the trailer that I'm talking about, you couldn't even see it. You could just tell that there is no effort in the game, and it's just bad in general from the things that are happening, and there was no action, no gunplay, no anything. They were just kind of walking in the Justice League Museum, and that was it. And just from that, you could already tell it's atrocious.
Ultimately ended up being, which is why it was panned critically, and people were hoping that the Joker DLC in Season 1 would provide some hope for the future. But that was a disaster, completely lacking in substantial new content, not to mention the way they locked Joker behind a huge grind wall that you could skip if you paid. That was really scummy and went against the promise of characters not being paywalled. And so one thing led to another. Players dropped off very quickly. The game again cost Warner Brothers $200 million and potentially more since then. And the rest is history. And I don't imagine it'll be long before the news is relayed.
Yeah, it was supposed to go for 4 seasons minimum. They kind of promised 4 seasons. Currently, we have 2, and Season 2 is just a reskin fight from the base game. So you shouldn't probably expect anything from the next 2 seasons if they even happen. They're probably not happening. Anyway, those young out. Bye bye.